A very good morning. We're glad you're still watching Morning at NTV. Welcome from that Kickstarter where the discussion was the appreciation of nurses and the nursing profession. Of course, here at NTV, we do celebrate the profession, and we shall be looking forward to events later today and, of course, the coverage that shall come with that in our subsequent bulletins. NTV Kaungezi at 7 o'clock and NTV Tonight at 9 p.m. Right now, we are taking note of something that is going on the African continent. African electricity regulators are here in Kampala and a meeting discussing a range of issues concerning power. Now, they've been here, I understand, for the last 4 days. The conference or meeting is underway and it's into its middle stages. Of course, we shall be looking forward to what resolutions come up and, of course, be able to understand how we inch forward with regard to consumption, regulation, distribution of power in this country, and of course what is being benchmarked from other places. Joining me for the discussion is the Chief Executive Officer, Electricity Regulatory Authority, Ziria Tibalwa Waako. I hope I pronounced that right, but I'm a very...
Hello, viewers.
Welcome to the program. Dr. Peter Twesigye, electricity distribution expert. Also, welcome to the program.
Good morning, viewers.
A very good morning to you. Of course, I know you guys are discussing a lot of things right now and you're hosting guests from across the continent. You must be very busy. We appreciate the fact that you made time to come and be able to discuss these particular aspects. I'll begin with what is being described as the African Electricity Regulatory Peer Review and Learning Network, PRLN. What is that?
Thank you. So the Peer Review and Learning Network is an initiative of the African electricity regulators on the continent. So this is a group of 5 CEOs who visit the 6 purposely to interrogate the regulatory system in each country and understand how regulation works. The objective here is to improve managerial capability and transparency around decision making to ensure that the sector is transparent, efficient, and can attract investments into the sector. The overall aim actually is to improve the managerial capabilities of different stakeholders, giving them the experience and exposure to how regulation is practiced in different countries across the continent.
Okay.
So that's the broad objective. And this is on the backdrop that we are witnessing globally on the continent, that regulation and its practice is actually declining. So its independence is increasingly eroded by political interference. And oftentimes, decisions made by regulators are reversed by policymakers and politicians on some decisions that do not actually blend in well with the techno-economic justifications that underpin the whole energy sector business model. Yeah. So the team is in Uganda to purposely learn how Uganda has been doing its regulation on the continent, knowing that it's been ranked as the best performing regulator on the continent by the African Development Bank Electricity Regulatory Index for 4 years running in a row. And they are coming to learn from what Uganda has done. But Uganda will also have some lessons to draw from each of these countries.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. And the other aspect of the peer review is that it is coordinated within the Power Futures Lab, which is a research unit on the energy in Africa. It is the leading center of excellence on research. So we actually lead research in power procurement, that's an investment attraction on the continent, through IPPs or reverse auctions. So the objective of IPPs through the project finance model or auctions is actually to help achieve efficient prices. And when I say efficient prices, people ask for competitive prices, but you can only achieve competitive prices if you run a competitive tender that can reveal the lowest possible price that you can achieve in a transparent way rather than directly negotiated contracts. So the second research area we look at is the power market reforms, regulation and utility performance. Cognizant of the fact that power markets on the continent are changing, we are seeing the uptake of renewables, which are cheap, underpinned by the drastic drop in prices of solar PV and wind.
That's right.
But we're also seeing the penetration of gas as an emerging strong energy source, as well as geothermal. So that changes the design of the power markets, and how that is regulated is critical to the regulators.
Okay.
The performance of utility regulation is in terms of most utilities on the continent, out of the 54 countries, only 2 are financially viable. And one of them is Uganda, the other one is the Seychelles. So how is it that we can only have 2 utilities across the entire continent?
A mere 2.
Only 2.
That speaks of something far broader or more deeper than we may understand, and you will have to explain exactly how Uganda and the Seychelles are managing to be at the top of the game.
Yes, and I will leave that to the CEO of ERA.
Okay, yeah, sure, no doubt. You're contextualizing the whole thing, no doubt. You will, of course, take us through the significance of regulation of utilities on the African continent and how Uganda's electricity supply industry has been and how it plays well into what is being described as the PRLN.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers. Regulation is the extreme opposite of a competitive market, where market forces compare, determine efficiency, determine technology, determine cost efficiency. Now, where you don't have a competitive open market, like in most of the electricity supply industry of developing countries, you need a regulator.
That's right.
To set standards, to determine the technical cost efficiency, to be able to represent the interests and balance the interests of the various stakeholders. And these stakeholders, I will not differ from Peter, but I will just emphasize, they include the policymakers, the politicians, they include the consumer, they include the investors that bring in capital to ensure that the electricity supply industry is developed.
That's right.
And it is operated in an efficient way. So that's the need for the regulator. It is a phase in the growth of the electricity supply industries because you start with the monopolies. You remember we had the vertically integrated UEB, which was entirely government, and it was doing everything. And then you progress to unbundling, where you have a participation of government on one side, but also the introduction now of the private player. Government securing the risks and providing the comfort that the private player who is coming in to invest, the investment will be viable. They will be able to recover their capital that is invested. Then as you progress now, you build enough investment confidence, investment climate to enable the open trading market operate without necessarily government securities and government guarantees. Right. So it is a process in the development of electricity supply industry that necessitates regulation because it is not fully competitive, and therefore someone must represent the interests of the various players within that electricity supply industry. Now, the peer review learning network, we are privileged to be the pioneer in hosting this program.
It is the first of its kind. It
is the first of its kind, and Uganda is the first to benefit from it.
Wow.
And the experts, my colleagues, the CEOs of the regulator of South Africa, the CEO of the regulator of Ghana, PAC, the CEO of the regulator of Namibia, the CEO of the regulator of Kenya, that is the IPRA, Energy, Petroleum Regulatory Authority, and the experts from the Cape Town University, from the Power Future Lab, are here. They have been interacting in our presence and in sometimes when we are not in the room to be able to evaluate what makes the Ugandan regulatory climate investment the best, and how is it that for the last 4 years in a row the evaluation has always put the Ugandan regulatory climate for the electricity supply industry on top, number one. So we are privileged to host it, but also we are looking forward to the findings because regulation is a catch-up game. It is a process of keeping up with the technology, keeping up with the customer and the consumer needs, which change every other day. And we believe that the findings will go a long way in improving the power supply efficiency, the power supply security, and issues of cost efficiency, affordability, that will speak to the needs of the common man.
Okay, we shall be coming to the issue of cost and, of course, affordability for the common man. Many people across the country think that power is very expensive and also sometimes unreliable. I don't know whether the experts at the particular meeting are tackling that. You spoke of findings. What is being interrogated exactly, and when the resolutions are made, how do we move forward?
They are looking at the 4 themes of regulation.
Okay.
They are looking at the regulatory governance that evaluates the laws that put in place the regulator, the legal and the regulatory framework, the roles of each party, the roles of the government, the roles of His Excellency, the roles of the policymakers, the ministry, the roles of the regulator, the utilities, the rules and obligations of the consumer. So they are looking at all that. That is called regulatory governance. How does the board of the Electricity Regulatory Authority make its decisions? How does it consult the affected stakeholders, the consumers, the politicians, the media? How do we engage the media? How do we inform the public? Are we able to simplify this information and throw it out in the media, both on the website, but also through public hearings and talk shows? So that is the other side of governance. They're also looking at the regulatory substance. How have these laws been transformed into regulations and standards and implemented to improve the access, to improve the reliability, to improve the affordability of electricity to the common man? When we talk about electricity being a contributor to the socio-economic transformation, what is it being done? So that is another area of regulatory substance. Then they're also looking at the outcome and impact. What does the common man benefit from all this? Is it only laws? Is it only agencies set up? Is it only governance? But are we seeing outage frequency, outage duration, cost of electricity being equitable and continuously being efficient?
Okay.
Thank you.
Wow. Now, you are a distribution expert, Dr. Peter Twesigye, and when you look at the landscape within the distribution framework within Uganda, there are some people who are not actually convinced that everything is being done to ensure that that is streamlined. Would you, for example, say we are in the best of positions to be benchmarks, or to be a benchmark rather, for most of the African countries in terms of how we distribute our power?
I would say that within the broad context of the PRLN learning network is we are not explicitly benchmarking. We are sharing views. We are creating a platform where CEOs can share experiences. So it's a collegial system where the CEOs interrogate each other on what works and what doesn't work. But how that filters through the distribution arrangement is that if you look at the provisions of the current system in Uganda, the power system in Uganda, you notice that our access rates are very low on the continent comparatively. And globally on the continent, access rates are higher in the south and higher in the north. The entire sub-Saharan Africa in the middle there is all dark. It's a dark continent. And Uganda is making strides to go towards improve its access levels. So we want to see how can Uganda benefit from the other experiences of the other countries. South Africa is at around 98% coverage. Namibia is almost there as well. Kenya is the leader in the East Africa. They've managed to do about 80% in the last 4 or 5 years. The Ghana is around 80% in terms of its electrification rates. There have been initiatives to actually try and improve the performance, because it's not about the light, only the light.
Only the light.
It's about the financial sustainability of the whole ecosystem. Are you attracting the cheapest investments into the generation side? Can you ably evacuate that power to reach the distribution segment? We have the right transmission. Yes, we have the right transmission infrastructure to do that. Is it being run efficiently? Then on the distribution side, you need a financially viable distribution segment that can adequately collect revenue.
That's right. And
remit that to pay the generators without conflict of interest. This is a common issue that actually impedes the financial sustainability of energy sector. If you create a conflict of interest between a state-owned transmission company and a generation company that's run by government and IPPs, it means you're actually creating an incentive, a route for for certain principals, stakeholders to say, can you dispatch this state-owned company ahead of the IPP? And that creates financial risks for the IPPs. But we're also observing on the continent, sorry to cut you short, on the continent that if you don't provide the right incentives for state-owned generation companies as well, then you're depreciating their assets over time.
Okay.
Because they also have to earn a return that can maintain the assets.
Well, we are glad we have the CEO of the Regulation Authority. Please do respond to those concerns.
And I'm speaking in the broader context of Africa.
Of course, no doubt.
Exactly.
No, I want to believe that Uganda is ahead. And not by mistake, but by deliberate effort by both government, the ministry, and the institutions that have been put in place. We have managed to move that number of access to clean energy from as low as 12%. We are now speaking about 57%. And there are various programs in place that are being, funding is being mobilized to ensure that we achieve the targets in the NDP and beyond. We are looking at achieving 100% access at least before the 2030, and programs are in place, both supported by government, but also innovative ways supported by the private sector at a cost efficient way. Yes, and on the other side of the investment climate, really I wouldn't want to blow my trumpet, but the government of Uganda has done its best.
Okay.
We have always met our part of the bargain, even painfully, but we have been able to meet our part of the bargain, and because of that we are seeing the investment climate continuously improving so that we can attract cheap sources of financing, cheap sources of funding, and with the government support to mix both public funding and also private funding, we are seeing the cost of electricity continuously reducing, and the efficiencies in the various segments in the generation, in the transmission and the distribution being achieved. We also now speaking to the last mile. We don't only want to extend the wires, but we want to connect the people. And when we connect, we want the power to be on. Issues of power supply reliability, issues of power supply security, issues of power supply quality, dimming of lights is, things that now you don't find in many places. And then also we are looking at the environment, issues of charcoal power, innovations to ensure that we attract the Ugandan, to win them from depleting the forests, and we offer innovative incentive, low tariffs, and also partner with the efficient equipment manufacturers to be able to win the population from biomass to electricity. So I want to believe that we have not arrived, but the programs, the policies in place, and the support that we are getting across board. It's across board because we have support from cabinet, the executive, the parliament has supported us recently. You know that we have amended the bill for amendment of the Electricity Act has been passed to improve, targeting to improve efficiencies, but also to manage vandalism. We have also gotten a lot of support from the manufacturers to be able to promote the local content and bubu, to use our locally manufactured goods here, to prioritize them so long as they meet the issue of standards and they are able to guarantee them, and they are also cost efficient, and the consumers have supported us because we don't have the resources to be everywhere at the same time, but gradually you see this number increasing from 12 to 20s, from 20s to 30s. Now we are speaking about 57. Soon we will join the 80s and the 90s and be there.
Okay. No doubt you spoke about something that I'll be coming back to you a little bit later, vandalism and how that is being handled across the country. I have specific allegations that were made by a gentleman who is very vocal within the precincts of Parliament. I will of course be sharing that. But let me just speak to Dr. Peter Twesigye, a distribution expert. Madam Tibalwa says the transition, people must be able to use a little bit more electricity, but also the transition from biomass to use of power, especially in arrangements that are in the rural areas or the average household, even in the urban centers. EPCs, those are electric pressure cookers are very popular these days. Yesterday I was speaking to stakeholders who are looking forward to ensuring that people embrace the use of EPCs in. Is it possible to find a model that works well for the private sector, the guys who are providing these products, and also allows the regulators or the government that is providing the power to be able to not throw PowerPoints, more to speak, wherever they can be?
Yes, there are various models, and I think the cheapest that would be affordable for the people in peri-urban or rural areas is the use of mini grids and solar homes. Yes, mini grids are structured in a way that they are built in load centers or areas that can easily incubate demand at a cheaper cost. So if we competitively procure mini grids, which ERA has been doing through certain platforms, then you're able to attract a number of mini grids that can provide cheap and reliable electricity, and that electricity can be used for cooking and can be used for agricultural purposes, can also be used for other commercial activities. So that's one medium. The other option we are seeing increasingly getting adopted in other countries is what we call the distributed energy generation resources, and that includes solar home systems. These are rooftop solar home systems that people actually
install. We see many of them in the rural areas.
Yes. In certain countries, actually, they've actually developed to the extent of installing them on their commercial buildings or homes and feeding back to the grid, and they are paid for generation of that extra resource that they feed back into the grid. So, but in Uganda's context, we still need to achieve that improvement in the penetration of distributed energy resources, have more mini grids out there, have more solar systems in the interim, and as they incubate demand over time, maybe the grid will also be expanding for them to connect. The aspect of the cooking is really something important, and I'm glad that the ERA has developed a cooking tariff, which is an initiative to progressively give customers access to cheap electricity for cooking. Your mother and my mother should not be used seriously.
Yeah, sure, no doubt.
This here.
Okay, something comes up that's very interesting: tariffs for cooking. You will, of course, give us an idea of what that is, and also a comment on vandalism. There is an MP who said, and I will be very specific, that the vandalism that is being registered across the country is appears more like a planned thing, and there is either a cartel or a group of people who are dealing in these items, because when they are stolen, especially from the pylons on the main grid, when they look around, you don't find these being sold anywhere on any market. So where the hell are they going?
Thank you very much. I may not have that detail because I'm not privileged to the justification for that submission, but I can only share what is being done to ensure that a comprehensive framework that is all encompassing is put in place to manage this. For us, we call it economic sabotage.
Economic sabotage.
Yes, it is economic sabotage, where they are vandalizing not only pylons, they are punching our transformers and taking away the oil, they are cutting wooden poles. So I call it economic sabotage. So what is happening? As we speak now, there is a coordinated effort between the Office of the Prime Minister, between the Minister of Energy, between the security organs of this country to be able to look after these assets and put in place a communication framework where we have a quick response time to identify and be able to deal with that. So that is an immediate reactionary measure that we are undertaking. But in the long term, we are benchmarking. We are looking at coming up with a law, and we will be taking a bill to Cabinet and Parliament, a law that regulates the steel rolling and manufacturing business, because most of the vandalized equipment is either aluminium metal, steel metal, and therefore the possibility is either it is ending up in remolding or in welding beds and the like. So we need to regulate that steel scrap business in the country. That is on one side. The other side is that the law that has been the bill that has been approved by Parliament has put in place very heightened punitive measures as penalties for those who are caught in the act. The current law, which is being amended, was looking at 2 years of imprisonment. That has been increased to 10 to 15 years of imprisonment. It was looking at less than $1 million shillings. It has been increased to above $1 billion shilling. And therefore, when we arrest you, we are aware that you will not afford the $1 billion shillings. So you will end up in the dogs for 15 years. So we believe that together with regulating the scrap business, together with using the ICT and technology to have a rapid response and communication mechanism, we will be able to balance out this issue. Because yes, we want the business that is being done, but it's not still rolling, and manufacturing and scrap business should not be done in a way that is affecting the electricity supply industry. Because indirectly it increases the cost of maintenance of the industry, it leads to power supply outages, it affects the reliability of supply, and it is economic sabotage. It's like they are picking the bits and pieces of the economy and taking us backwards. Thank you.
Okay, the cooking strategy to ensure that those who want to use power to be able to prepare some little matoke. And
thank you for giving me opportunity to talk about this very, very good initiative, and we are implementing it using two methodologies. We have the 451.3 shillings per kilowatt hour or per token or per yaka token for institutional cooking. You must be aware that recently, with support from UNDP, we converted the Manamjimu cooking facilities from using biomass to using electricity.
That's right.
We recently also signed an MOU with Ziria, starting with the upper prisons, but also going countrywide to convert cooking facilities from using biomass to using electricity. So that is for institutional cooking, and we are going to continue. From Mulago now, we are looking at moving to the main cooking kitchen of the that Mulago National Referral Hospital. Now, on the other side of domestic cooking, the price for domestic cooking, as we speak now, is almost half of the price for lighting. That is 412 shillings per yaka token or per kilowatt hour. And this price was determined both through a survey where we went through some cooking institutions that have higher intake of biomass. And we looked at the details of the statistics. What is it that you spend on biomass? If we gave you power at this price, are you able to break even without increasing your costs of running the business?
That's right.
That is on one side. And then on the other side, the Makerere Institute of the SREC did a comprehensive comparison of the costs if I'm using electricity, if I'm using gas, if I'm using biomass in the form of charcoal, if I'm using biomass in the form of wood. And it was discovered, and they went through the different food types of cooking. If I'm cooking beans, if I'm cooking, and they discovered that with electricity and a pressure cooker, you need 40 minutes, and you are going to use less than 200 shillings. And there is no way, whether you are using biomass or charcoal, you can put a meal on the table using 200 shillings. So I want to confirm to the public that cooking with electricity is the cheapest, and we will continue to sustain the reliability of supply to ensure that outages don't affect your cooking experience.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
That is a very impressive framework that is being rolled out. You are the distribution expert. I want to ask you, you spoke earlier about the fact that some of the rollout of this particular utility is influenced sometimes by forces that are powerful from the state, and that there is need, for example, to streamline that. But do we really see that happening? Is it even possible for state players to be out of the equation when it comes to distribution of power and anything within that particular setting?
I think let me put it in perspective before Peter comes in, because I'm seated at the steering wheel and this is my daily bread. I really want to not only speak to the public, but my colleagues, the regulators here, the CEOs that are visiting us, that the work of the regulator is to balance the interest of the stakeholders. The only reason that the politician will come in with an and realistic demand is because the technocrats have not adequately justified and supported him in a timely manner to be able to follow the right procedure. So you are not doing your work, get a blue paper. Can you do your work? Can you do your work? But if we reflect and take on our mandate consultatively, and when you are consulting, who else to consult than the politicians? Because I mean, if I determine the tariff today and you found people on the street, the regulator has no capability to reverse that.
That's
and
right.
therefore they are directly responsible. So while I can say to some extent what Peter is raising is something that we always need to be cognizant of. I've also seen countries where the technocrats are laid back and they expect the politicians also to be laid back, and yet the people have entrusted them with their votes. They are here for a limited time and they must deliver. So I want to believe that the technocrats are paid to do the job. And they must do their job. And if they do their job in a timely manner.
Doctor is itching to respond.
We have experienced it here in Uganda.
Yeah.
We have experienced it.
No
the
doubt.
sector, as he has reported, is one of the financially viable sector. Why?
Sure.
Because we have support across board. Not only the consumers, not only the manufacturers, but also the politicians and the policymakers. But
Doctor,
I give him opportunity.
I agree with what the point she's raising, that as institutional heads and managers in these institutions, they have the primary mandate to deliver services to consumers.
That's it.
But there is the other concept. Conceptually, the aspect of having state involvement in the day-to-day management of entities is bound to create failures. And these are governance failures. Because if you allow your principal to actually decide who should do what, you're technically disempowered to take any meaningful techno-economic decision. Because the views of the policymakers will be different from what the technocrat is supposed to do. So in countries where we've seen the state meddle so much in the affairs of generation, transmission, distribution, you're bound to have a systemic failure that is going to create the sector failure broadly. And I can give examples on the continent where the state has deeply entrenched itself and rent-seeking behavior comes in. So the aspect that there is need to create a gap, create an arm's length distance between the technocrats like Ziria, who is regulating, the people who are distributing, the people who are transmitting, the people who are generating, is important for the sector's sustainability. And that needs to be appreciated by stakeholders. But should the technocrats actually fail to do their job, like she's saying, if you're laid back and you sleep, then the state will come in.
All right. Very lastly, I just want your take on this so that we can close this particular segment. The development of nuclear power. The president has said we do not need nuclear for arms, but we need it for power. You are a distribution expert, and I believe that you've looked into the possibilities of how this can be done, whether it can actually be done within the country. Very quickly, what are the prospects for Uganda?
It's good to have ambitions for nuclear. I agree. It's an efficient energy source for countries that have nuclear, but it's very costly. Very costly. I don't think this generation of Ugandans can afford to pay for a nuclear plant. We've seen examples in South Africa. The cost to build a nuclear plant, if it is to be privately funded or even state funded, you need to forego the quantum of resources that would otherwise need to spread to other services of the sector, maybe health in schools and other. You need to be ready to take that decision and say we're foregoing this option and we're going to fund a nuclear station. Right now in Africa, it's only South Africa that's running a nuclear plant. If you go to Europe, I know because of the Ukrainian crisis, we're seeing a shift where France is saying, I'm going to increase the build of nuclear resources. The UK is saying, oh, we need to change, we should also do the same. But Africa, I think we need it. Please don't misquote me. We need it. But the question is can it be funded now in this time?
Okay, very lastly, you are the regulator. You head the regulation authority. Can we manage?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much.
Atoms for peace, with proper planning, yes, we can.
All right, thank you very much. Ziria Tibalwa Waako, the Chief Executive Officer at the Electricity Regulation Authority, and Dr. Peter Twesigye, Electricity Distribution Expert, for the insight that you have offered us regarding this particular issue. We do hope that the resolutions that come up at the meeting of the CEOs that is underway, we shall be in the loop and of course be able to share much of that information. That's it for Take Note. Let's now go to Ivan K. Walunyolo in Entebbe for the latest